give you a moment. I'm gonna give you a moment to like, give you a moment to share, and definitely subscribe. And give you a moment or two. Very important that you do. Um, like and subscribe to the channel, cause that more or less keeps our conversation moving up the algorithms, and allow us to our program to be seen by other people that have a chance, probably wouldn't even have a chance to see or hear about the story or whatever we discuss. And so yeah, like, share, subscribe. Do that for me first. I'm gonna give you a moment or two to do that, and it's much appreciated. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Appreciate that. Um, so more or less, I want to talk about a little bit of history, and I think history is very important. History is very important, and uh, has to be discussed and qualified, and hopefully, folks later on will use historic examples on ways of how they should move forward in their processes. And so, today, what I want to talk about is a maneuver that I organized um, in Dixon Circle. And there's actually a second part of this, but I'm gonna talk about the Dixon Circle part. We opposed police brutality for many years now. For many years now, here in the city of Dallas, the contemporary police brutality movement started back in 2010, but there were a number of different protests in the early 2000s that I was a part of. But very important, in 2010 was the time frame where we decided to get organized, and we tried to move a little differently. This is like what led to the organizing of the Huey P Gun Club too, because the organizing the gun club was a part of that process. But a gentleman by the name of Tobias Mackey was shot in Oak Cliff, by a police officer, and ultimately killed. He was shot 9 times. He was unarmed. The city of Dallas was sued, and they basically had to pay a fee. What ended up they having to pay a fee for it. And so just due to this, the situation, um, this police murder occurred October 29th, 2010. Uh, Shot 9 times. A little 12-year-old boy was also grazed by a bullet. He was little Xavier Collins. That was his name, Xavier Collins. Was shot out. He was grazed by a bullet near, I guess, where the Coke machine was. Myself, Stephen Benavidez, some other folks, some other pastors and reverends were there the day after, and we kind of walked around, talked to the residents, and kind of got their perspective on what occurred and what happened, and that sort of thing. And they was telling us it was like a wild west, and you can imagine AR-15 style weapon being shot, and inside of an enclosed area, an apartment complex. Like what could what that sounds like, what I'm saying. So he was shot at least 9 times. As I stated, the city much later was sued, and in a civil case, and basically the family was paid because of the liability aspect for us the city is concerned. The officer, of course, was later terminated, but of course, as in many other cases across the country, the officer was never held criminally accountable. So that's what really started the police brutality movement in a contemporary sense in Dallas. And of course, movement's always been in existence, but I'm talking about in the contemporary sense. From 2010, next big one was James Harper, which occurred at Dixon Circle. And in Dixon Circle, that nearly caused a rebellion. And this was in June 2012 that the murder of James Harper occurred. Nearly caused a rebellion. It was 800 people that was outside in South Dallas. They was all upset, uh, pissed off about what occurred. Apparently, James Harper was running in South Dallas and Dixon Circle, climbing over get number of gates, being chased by Officer Brian Rowden at that time, and Brian Rowden ultimately shot uh, James Harper in the back, killing him. And a number of people witnessed it and saw it, and they just brought them outside. The whole city was kind of on standby, and much of South Dallas on that day was shut down. I think that day was June 24th, 2012, if I'm not mistaken. Forgive me if I get my dates wrong. I think it was June 24th, 2012. I think that was the day. But I remember exactly where I was at. I was at work when I heard about it. I worked for Credit Protection Association at the time, and I heard about the shooting uh, on the radio, and it was also on the news, and different people was talking about it online at the time. And I decided that I was going to go there, and so I went home, and I later went. Uh, Headed towards Dixon. I prepared myself. I put me on a face mask to hide my face. I put me on some gloves to more or less prepare to make sure I didn't leave any fingerprints, and I grabbed a few other things. But I was mainly just trying to make sure that if something happened, that I would be more or less protected and can avoid as much as I could prosecution. That was really my goal, being honest with you. But I was there. I went down there, and ultimately uh, prepared to be engaged in some foolishness more in one way or the other on my end. I end up went down there and just kind of felt the vibe of the community and felt the vibe of the people and conversated with the people. And from that point forward, I was more or less connected with that particular situation. Um, and so the following few days after that, there was a meeting that was held at a church in that area, and it was with leadership and the family of James Harper, and that was sort of a decision kind of made of how they wanted to proceed forward, which I think ultimately led to that lawsuit that was talking about, and they was hoping, I'm sure, that against the Officer Brown Routing, that they were going to bring back a true bill. A true bill means that the grand jury found cause to have this case head to trial. But instead, as I stated in most other situations, especially across the country, the grand jury brought back a no bill, which basically means that it shouldn't be a trial, and the officer basically gets a chance to walk, and it's on the burden of the prosecution to get some new evidence to against the accused to be able to bring back the indictment. That's basically what happened. So, in many cases, we found, and at that particular time, through open records request, that a number of different officers at that particular time, particularly here in the city of Dallas, were able to go through that same scenario where a no bill was issued versus a true bill, and they were able to get off. Um, so what occurred in 2014 is when we organized the Huey P. Newton Gun Club. The article that I linked into the conversation, and Vice made the error of stating that our first maneuver was uh, related to James Harper. It was not related to James Harper. The whole tone of that particular article that I linked it just for a historical reference, so for states is concerned. But that whole article actually takes the position, kind of a cynical position against everything that we were attempting to do that day. Um, but that was actually the kind of the overtone of more of the democratic mindset at that particular time. Of course, more of the liberal mindset. So that's kind of what the article represents, because obviously a lot of liberal folks don't like weapons and guns and things of that nature, and that's kind of the attitude of the author at that particular time. And of course, as Trump got you know, did what he did as far as a lot of things that he stated. the Democrats tried to more or less align themselves with the police brutality movement in an effort to try to get black folks to not support Trump. That's basically what I'm trying to get at. So I'm basically saying that before all that happened, before the Democrats tried to lead itself to that particular movement, to our police brutality movement at that particular time, there was criticisms about guns in general, and especially about black folks with guns. So we was dealing with a different type of media at that particular time because it was earlier on in the police brutality movement, and you know Trump wasn't on the scene yet as far as being president. That's what I'm trying to say. So that's the tone of that article. Take that article with a grain of salt. I just posted it for historical context. But to talk about that particular day in Dixon Circle, I had organized what I call a walkthrough, and basically, which means that we walk through a particular area. It was open carrying firearms and have conversations with the community about issues that they face, and so that's basically what happened. But we was also talking about James Harper. I felt that talking about James Harper was a very valid thing because that's something that that community would relate to because that situation occurred in 2012. That's about a year and a half time frame. So a lot of the people that were out there that night in 2012 was more than likely still the same community, and it's a lot of times it's a lot easier to have a conversation with people based upon something that they could actually relate to, and I felt that they could actually relate to it and wish they did. So we spent a little bit of time in Dixon Circle with our vice correspondent. Also, we had a small press conference right there in Dixon, talking about the need to control the politics of our community and really essentially police our own communities. That's what we were saying. That's basically what we was getting at. That was the purpose of the walkthrough, and also again to sort of bring up the conversation around James Harper. At that particular time, they they were still going through the motions of the civil case. I think the case had been filed already, and so it was going through the motions of the civil case. So obviously, we wanted the family, his sister Ashley, his mother Sandra, we wanted them to sort of let's get some of that support that they actually needed at that particular time. And of course, keep in mind, nothing can replace emotional support. So just a lot of things going on. Also, additionally, for a couple of years after the murder of James Harper, uh, we organized a candlelight uh, for James Harper on that particular day or around the day, and we included the community of Dixon, but especially his family was present. His sister, his mother, cousins, all those type of folks came out and supported the initial candlelights. Now, I heard from another one of his cousins now that they are maybe doing something a little different in the same area, and most definitely that should definitely occur and happen, because we should definitely remember the name of James Harper, who has a very large family in the city. A lot of folks knew him. G Code James Harper is what he was called, G Code. But that was organized again in 2014. The second part of that, which is mentioned in the article, uh, was we actually linked with the Indigenous Peoples Liberation Party, who was organized by Cooper Caraway at the time, uh, uh, downtown Dallas, and the purpose was to go to the federal building to deliver a report written by Stephen Benavidez called the history of violence. And the history of violence was talking about police brutality in the city of Dallas over a 10-year period. So we looked at between 2004 up until no, excuse me, like 2002 up until 2012 about police brutality, what the stats was, how many people was killed unarmed, how many people were armed, that sort of thing. And we found that there was quite a many unarmed individuals that's killed in Dallas that we didn't know until we actually did the records request. The one thing I do want to say will come out of that records request is that we were pushing for a severe review board, which ultimately happened, I believe, in 2019. Walter Tonga Higgins and Dominic Alexander were the main two leaders that took the movement that we started back in 2010, talking about the Civilian Review Board, and actually walked that process through everything. I do want to state that in 2016 there was a shooting in downtown Dallas that killed 5 police officers that basically just stomped the movement. It basically stomped it pretty tough, like it stomped it out. There wasn't any police brutality movement after the police officers were shot in Dallas. It just didn't exist. In fact, there wasn't any protests in the city neither, um, not relating to police brutality. But when Botham Jean got killed in 2018, murdered in 2018, September 6th, what that caused, that reinvigorated that conversation. And that's how, off of that, they were able to continue the conversation with the new severe review board. So we're talking about essentially like 10 years of organizing that took place. That our goal initially was to get a new severe review board. Now we got a new severe review board, and the point of that is to provide some sort of oversight as relates to the Dallas police. That's the point. But back to my thing about going downtown. We was armed uh, downtown Dallas with assault weapons. Um, um, a few people had a couple of handguns, whatnot. And the point was to deliver that report. Now we pulled up at City Hall. Myself, Rakim Balogun, was Eric K. Frey, and a few other people. The thing of the matter, we also, some folks had some car troubles as well that particular day, because I remember they stopped over in Dixon and they had to leave their car in Dixon. And a couple of other people jumped in my car, and we went downtown, and they had to stay back and get AAA or something in Dixon. So that was a bummer. Um, so we were probably, at this particular time, we was probably about 14 deep at this particular time. And back in them days, you had to pay coins to park. Now you can just put your card up or do something simple. But them days, and didn't everybody have quarters and stuff, whatnot. So we parked, and we went on our way down which was about a mile walk. And at that particular time, I'm not too much sure that people saw any type of civilian formation in terms of being armed in Dallas. I ain't never heard nothing like that. So we was going to the federal building and going down there with the vice correspondent. Uh, I actually went inside. I went up to the 10th floor. Took about a few people. One of them was Cooper Caraway, and if you know Cooper Caraway, now he was the leader of the Indigenous People Liberation Party. He was also a well-known organizer. He's also a well-known union organizer, and I believe South Dakota right now currently well known. I think he's the president of a couple of associations. So he might be the president of the whole state as far as the union is concerned. I'm not sure, but I know he does some great work right now. Um, but much of our the work that we did at that particular time was built in, and the connections of organizing here in the city. But I thought it was just important to talk about Dixon Circle, which was not our first public works as far as the Huey P. Gun Club. It was the second maneuver. Wasn't the first, it was the second. Wikipedia says it wrong, says it was our first, based upon this article here that I put. And that was one thing that I learned about the media at that particular time. When media put something out, usually the smaller media outlets will run with what the larger media outlet says. But our first one was on August 20th, 2014. This one, which was a couple of months later in October 2014, was the first time that we let someone be a part of a sort of tag along and that sort of thing. And they kind of took a sort of cynical position towards it at that time, almost comedic, almost. But over time, a couple of incidents occurred years later that they realized that the folks back in Dallas who had initiated this movement for the Black Open Carry was very serious. And I think two things that occurred, which is important to mention about that. Number one, with Rakim Balogun being arrested as the black identity extremist. The FBI was showed they had been monitoring us as far back as 2015, or monitoring Rakim as far back as 2015. So that was the first thing they realized we were serious. The second thing is what occurred in Dallas on July 7th, 2016. They realized that black open carry was obviously something to be looked at a little closer, um, based upon the situation. And of course, I'm not choosing side one way or the other on that for part of it. That's not the point of this conversation. I'm just saying that I'm talking about Vice's position when they took in that article, when they took sort of uh, kind of like a cynical viewpoint of us. They didn't think we was for real. I just kind of read the article again, but me and Rakim and other folks, we was on the phone when that article dropped, and boy, we were just arguing about that article. It's like, oh man, that article is trash. You know what I'm saying? And so it's definitely trash to me all the time. I don't even read it, but it's funny to look at myself. Basically 10 years ago, and just kind of it just looks funny to me just looking at myself 10 years ago. Anyway, just remember, uh, continue to work, continue to organize your community. That's find out what the politics is. That's what the OGs tell us, and try to do the work for the people in the community. If you do me a big favor, like, share, subscribe to this. If you can, if you hadn't liked the channel, do like it. You know what I'm saying? Share it, subscribe. Subscribe is important. I want to keep these conversations going. I want to continue to talk about a lot of the history that I know, and also you can share the history what you go through locally as well, or whatever your ideas are. Feel free to comment. All this is important, for us historical record or whatnot. I think we should try to create this thing for use in the future, to be able to look at this and try to not necessarily make the mistakes that we made. One thing that I was told by Elder Bendeli Tayumba before he passed in 2012, he was the founder of Pan African Connection. He said, "Do not continue to try to redo history." That was one of his main comments. Like, don't try to redo it, and because we were so what I want to say, we were just so sensationalized. A lot of times you read these books about people from previous generations, and it's easily become sensationalized by their work, And I think part of this, part of this was sensational too. And so I do challenge folks not to try to necessarily recreate what we have done in this generation, but just learn from what we've done so they can be better in the future. Outside of that, peace, power, prosperity. In the words of my comrades, peace, power, prosperity. Like, share, subscribe. You know what I'm saying? And I'm gonna try to have another conversation tomorrow. I'll try to have a couple more often here. So let's just continue the dialogue. Share it. Subscribe to me. Peace.